Due to an unfortunate little glitch in my recording equipment, about 20 or 25 minutes into the talk, when Dr. Waters is talking about objective and subjective, there is a skipping that took place because of some sort of computer interruption of the signal. So there's nothing wrong in the actual CD. The problem was in the recording itself. It lasts for about a minute, and then after that the recording is fine.
Okay, we all ready? Before we start on the recording, I just want to say somebody rang me today and said, could she bring somebody? You don't have to ask for that. Bring as many people as you like. You're doing a job, for the people themselves. You'll find it'll bring great understanding, and you'll find it'll defend basic truths, like, for instance, Christian peoples accept this, that we have a spiritual soul and it survives after death. We'll prove those things. We'll prove the existence of God. We'll do a lot of stuff, and you cannot be perfect in any subject without the corresponding part of philosophy. For those who weren't here before, I'll tell you this. I showed this the other day. For any other science, there's a part of philosophy dealing with it. There's biology, botany, plants, the study of plants. There's a part of philosophy we call vegetative psychology, which deals with that. Animals, the same. Human persons, the same. Truth, knowledge, justice, any concept you can think of. The philosophy of law we study in ethics. So you won't see it at the moment. You might say, where are we going with all this? Just give it time, that's all I ask. That's what Woodbury used to say. Give yourselves a chance, give yourselves time. You'll find a lot of things will come good. I hope you don't lose something through that hole in the head. So, we can start now. Mr. Venari, we can start. So, my friends, we saw what these men are teaching. Pseudo-Dennis. See, for Plotinus, the one, it's out there, unknowable. If I could know it, then it's not the one. He saw the need for unity. Things that scientists write today sometimes is just drivel. I spent the first part of my life, as you know, studying philosophy at night as a student from the age of 21. That was about the year 1845, I think. And then I started studying. But when I was in studying pharmacy at the University of Sydney, it's surprising the things that men said, scientists. And it's worse today with physicians. They'll say anything to justify something. Oh, I didn't say every physician. I know some marvellous men. My good friend Sam Nigro in Cleveland, Ohio, psychiatrist. Dr. John Shea in Toronto, marvellous people. But what people say today, quite uninformed about so many things they speak forth. As for the politico-economic area, my God. So, St. Thomas Aquinas, the prince of philosophers. A young woman went to Léon Blois in Paris. Her boyfriend we know as Jacques Maritain. Jacques Maritain in French. Jacques Maritain was her boyfriend, and she said, Monsieur Blois, Jacques and I are thinking of studying St. Thomas, Thomistic philosophy. What do you think? He said, Mademoiselle, il n'y a que deux philosophies. Le Thomisme, I'll go back over that. There are only two philosophies, Thomism et le bullshitisme. I don't need to translate the last bit, I'm sure. But after my whole life of studying St. Thomas, the philosophy is magnificent. In the Anglican Cathedral in Canterbury in England, I saw magnificent windows, Augustine and St. Thomas. The three greatest philosophers of all times, the old pagan of Aristotle, as Woodbury said, if he came in the room, he'd kiss the floor he walked on. Aristotle, St. Thomas and St. Albert recognized he was the great man. Then the next really great one, St. Augustine. Then St. Thomas Aquinas. They're reckoned as the three greatest of all philosophers.
Did you teach in London?
I didn't teach in London, no. I sat in on classes, though.
I think I read about you.
No, you didn't read about me in London. You could read about me here. It's in post offices, you know. No, I did not. I wasn't. I think you must have heard somebody else.
I think I read about you in London.
No, you couldn't have. I played a very low-key residence there at the time. You see, I just came in quietly and sat in.
They talked about you being very quiet. It was suspicious of you.
Oh. Well, I won't comment on that. They probably had good reason. They probably had good reason if they're suspicious of me. So these St. Thomas, we're not going to do too much here because the rest of the course will be based upon these great masters, and we'll be dealing with St. Thomas all the way through, and Aristotle. So remember, the old pagan Aristotle is closer to being a real good Christian man than many of the Christian people I've met today in the world. Believe me. So, my friends, having gone through that, one point we need to emphasize, there are two modes of science, two kinds of science, if you like. And I'd like to mention them. Let's suppose we're talking about silver. Now, silver, its melting point is about 980 degrees centigrade. Its boiling point is 2000 degrees centigrade. It's a marvelous conductor of electricity and a marvelous conductor of heat. If you had saucepans made of silver, things would cook much quicker, much better. Excuse me, don't forget to tip that waitress there. So,
Temper trip.
now, what is it about this? What is silver? I don't know. I only know what it does. I really can't penetrate the heart of silver to see what it is. Those who studied philosophical psychology with me will remember that form is the reason of knowledge. Matter is an impediment to knowledge. I can know what man is generally, and I could write, as I have written, whole works on man. But to know this one, or that one, it's very difficult. The reason is the form is so immersed in matter. Matter's an impediment to knowing things. And as I've often said, the best way to get to know another is to love them. You see things through their eyes, and you see things more empathetically, if you like. Empathetically. So, what is silver? We only know these as signs of silver. We don't know what silver is in itself. I can only describe it, its structure and things like that. But what is the form of silver? What is that thing within it that makes it be silver and not gold? Let's consider man. Now, we prove in philosophical psychology that man is a rational animal. I was walking behind Cologne Cathedral, and I saw in big letters, the Rathaus. The Rat House, where I come from, that means the Nut House. It's this town hall, the city hall. Ratio in Latin means thinking, thoughts, reasonings. And Rat in German means something similar. So the Rathaus is the house where the council meet. They all meet in council. I stopped and I looked at the Rathaus. Das ist nicht gut. This is not good, I said. It was right behind the Cologne Cathedral. But I thought it was quite funny. So, what do we know about man? He's a talky animal. He's a laughy animal. He's a social animal. He's a political animal. He's an artistic animal. He's a religious animal. By nature religious. And all of those things, he's artistic, he's economic, he's political, social, all those things we can say about man. But we know why he has those things. The arrows will go this way. It's because he's rational. Because he's rational. That's why. In other words, laughing is rationality applied when something is ridiculous or disproportionate or something like that. That's what laughing is. I mentioned, I think last week, the Australian kookaburra laughs. And I've many times been in a forest and I've suspected there were kookaburras, and I've let out the kookaburra call, and next thing you've got a lot of kookaburras laughing. But that's only the matter of speech. That's not proper speech. As I mentioned to those last week, you might remember that we have another one in Australia, not only the kookaburra, but we have other things that can make perfect speech. One of them is called the lyrebird, because its tail is shaped like a lyre, L-Y-R-E, but I think it equally could be called a lyre, L-I-A-R, because it can mimic any bird. I've got a recording of this. I hope if my tapes are still not stuck together and working. You can hear the lyrebird going, imitating an engine, a woodcutter's engine. And you can hear the coach whip bird. I can't imitate it, of course, it's along the banks of the creek. And then straight after it, the female will be answering. But what we'll hear is you'll hear that, then straight after you'll hear the crack of the whip again. This time it's the lyrebird imitating the coach whip bird. Hear kookaburra laughter. Then you'll hear the lyrebird will laugh again, just like the kookaburra. So these
descriptions are very old-fashioned.
Which descriptions?
Of man, of silver.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
I would never describe man like that.
I didn't describe man like that. I'd call him describes him.
Is this from Saint? Is this from the 16th century?
That's from me. Man's by nature a social animal, isn't he? Man's by nature.
That's old-fashioned stuff.
Well, what would you call contemporary stuff, for instance, the modern stuff? What would you call that?
A man is made of in the image of God.
Yeah.
And he's conscious, subconscious, and superconscious.
What is the subconscious?
And also he has a gift from God, which is the gift of...
Well, if I was teaching theology, I would teach that something like that too. Not quite as the way you did it, but I would do it if I was teaching theology. But I'm not teaching theology. If I was teaching chemistry, I'd describe man as a being made of about 90% of water.
No, electric.
Pardon? You would?
Electric. Electricity.
Man's made of electricity.
Yeah, 100%.
100% of electricity. I didn't know I had that effect on people.
What was that?
But I said I didn't know I had that effect on people. No, that's an object. We'll be dealing with that in a minute. We'll get to that in a few minutes, I think.
Dirt.
Pardon?
Actually, your ashes. You're dirt. Man is dirt.
Man's like dirt. He's not dirt.
Yeah, like earth is a dirty place.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's all figurative. That's describing man for primitive peoples to understand. You see, I'm describing man according to his ontological structure, the very structure of the being. We prove all this in philosophical psychology, but here we're not studying that. I'm using it only as an illustration of a kind of science, you see, that what you say is partially right, but if I was teaching theology, I'd say he's like God. But though I can teach even philosophy and metaphysics and show he's like God, and I'll show you that later. But we'll come to that.
It all comes down to one thing.
What is that?
God is the truth.
Yes, God, it doesn't all come down to that. God is the truth.
Let the teacher finish his course, and then maybe question afterwards.
Yeah. See, we'll see all of that as we go along. So give us time to come to it. Man is got to be looked at according to the particular science. If I was teaching biology, I'd see him one way. If I was teaching chemistry, I'd see him as another way. He's made up of protein, he's made up of salts, he's made up of, say, lecithin, for instance. I'd be teaching that if I'm teaching chemistry. A science is measured by its object. If I'm dealing with economics, I'd deal with man one way. If I'm dealing with chemistry, I'd speak of man in another way. If I'm speaking of man according to his properties, his proper predicates, his proper accidentals, which belong to him and him alone, I'd mention these. That's what man is. That escapes the chemist. If for instance, let's put it this way, If a psychologist says there's no soul, he's wrong. If a psychologist says there is a soul, he's still wrong. He's outside his field. Or we could put it this way, he's not speaking as a psychologist. Every science has what we call its object. What it aims at. I'm going to deal with that in some length. I've got pages coming out for you on that.
So what science is that?
That's philosophical psychology. And also common sense. Look, what do you do in New Guinea? I've seen a film put on by the Department of Information in Australia where men went for the first time into a certain area of the highlands in New Guinea. And what did they do? They're going along and they're describing it. We know we're being watched. We haven't seen them yet. They know there are natives watching them. And they're treading them very warily. And one of the poor natives, the New Guineans, have a very bad habit of putting a sliver of razor-sharp bamboo sticking up that keeps enemies away. And one of the police boys, the police are made up of coastal natives and the army too. And one of them ran his foot on this, and they had to help him, of course, pull up and give him some treatment. But they could see movement in the bushes. They knew they were there. Then finally they found a village. I think I mentioned this last week, didn't I? Yes. And how the natives warned the white men, they're rather short people, warned them about what they could do. And they have the big long bow. And they fired an arrow into a target and looked at the white men as if to say, you know what you're in for if you give us trouble. So the white men, they all carried Lee Enfield 303 rifles, the natives, the coastal natives, the police. So they dumb a bullet, flattened the nose of the bullet. New Guinea is essentially a pig culture, and they bought a small pig from the natives. And they put the pig up on the target where the arrow had been. And the Kiap, the police commissioner, said, fire, he said to his police assistant. And the fellow fired the bullet at the pig. Of course, when the bullet, the flattened end, hit the pig just disintegrated. And the natives' eyes were like that. they realised they had supermen amongst them at last. They were scared. So, but those natives lived in a village. So this is what we call an essential predicate. This is a property of theirs. Property comes from the Latin proprius, meaning own. It's man's own, one of the things that belongs to him. So when I'm dealing with these are not brute animal things. Man is by nature poetic. Man's by nature economic. Man is by nature religious. All of these predicates belong to man. I'm speaking of man essentially. If we describe man as, say, 90% water, how do we distinguish him from a gorilla or a chimpanzee, etc.? So, the lyrebird, by the way, is a bird about that big. So these are what properly belong to him. But here we know ultimately why man is social, because he's rational. He's got speech, and that's a sign of his sociality. He doesn't talk to himself, he talks to other people. There's some beautiful stuff written by St. Thomas on this. His work on the it's given different titles in English, on kingship. On kingship. Right at the beginning of the work, he speaks about these things, why man's essentially social, a social animal. St. Thomas compares that with ants, cranes, and different other animals. Yeah, they sound as if they're social, but you're not using the word social in the same meaning as when you're using it with man. They are gregarious. Grex in Latin means a flock or a herd. They assemble in herds. They're not social like man. The high complexity of society with man is a vastly different thing. So this is one mode of science. This is called perinoetic science. Peri in Greek means, noesis means knowledge, peri means around, knowledge around the thing but not in the heart of it. What is silver itself? We don't know. But here we call this dianoetic, knowledge through. Dia in Greek means around, Diameter. I'm sorry, this is diameter. What have I written? Through, rather, I'm sorry. What's it around? Through. Through the centre of the thing. Perinoetic and dianoetic. Diarrhea. Through. That's what I was groping for a second. I'd forgotten what I was going to say. So, my friends, there are two kinds of science. Mathematics is of this kind. All the experimental sciences, the natural sciences often called, biology and, say, chemistry, geology, physics. Well, physics combines the two, etc. They're that kind. You don't know why silver nitrate is silver nitrate and not silver chloride. You don't know why that is. All you can say is it does this when you put it in such and such. When you put silver nitrate in water and you put a salt in there, ordinary common salt, you get silver chloride. You dissolve that in ammonium hydroxide solution, you get silver diamine chloride and silver diamine hydroxide solution, which all redissolves. These are great helps in analysis. But you can't say why it is this or why it is that. What makes it be this or what makes it be that? So there are two kinds of science. This one is a science about the very beings itself, the very heart of the being. This science is called empirical science. It deals with the appearances of the thing, how it looks to us. For instance, there are two psychologies. There's a psychology of this kind, experimental, and there's a philosophical psychology. Much more interesting, much more exact, and much more useful. Amateur psychologists always play with this, of course. But this is what we studied, the first course we started with, you might remember. Remember that? We studied with that? Started with that, rather? Miss Anthony was one of the people who helped me start the school. Oh, thank you very much. How did you know I was too old to bend down? So now we come to the nature of metaphysics. There are 5 sciences in philosophy, and this is the heart of it. There is a course we often give, we called Introduction, and that's what I've been dealing mainly with so far. There's a lot more could be said about it. What's the use of philosophy, people say? Well, here's one use. It makes you happy. I can't find anything more useful than that. Here's another one. It teaches you how to think. Maritain said in Logic, in his work on logic, which is a marvellous book and deals with all the various aspects of logic. I think you get very complex, but fascinating study. I just love to teach that here sometime. He said it teaches one, exercises the mind, the thinker, and enables us to think better. So we come now to chapter 3, the nature of metaphysics, on page 13. The subject of metaphysics, being in common. Being, generally speaking. Being in common, as I said. Now, for instance, tree is a being. Time is a being. It's not nothing. If you're trying to beat the clock, believe me, you'll see that time is really something. It's a something. A thought is a being. The relationship of nearness is a being, or farness is another being. Look, that's a being. Look, here comes another one. That's a being. That's a being. These things are beings, different kinds of beings, but beings nevertheless. If I'm not doing anything, or if I'm doing that, you know there's a big difference. Relationships are being. Try and convince a woman that she's not married to a husband. And that relationship, which is in our thoughts here, but measured by reality, and they know that there's a reality there, a being there. So, the subject of metaphysics, what do we mean by subject? There are 2 words I want you to know about. One is sub yature. I've got this written in the text later on. Yature. Yature, there's no J in Greek. So, Latin rather, I'm sorry, Latin. So the I takes the place of a J. Yature we've got the word in English, javelin, to something you throw. So yachere means to throw, something you throw. Thrown under, subway. But the subway, so sub means under, thrown under. This object, again, ready. Javelin, as I said, is the word we have in. Ob is a word, it means confront, in front of. Some say, I object. I'm throwing something in front. So the object of a science is what's thrown in. What's thrown in front of botany? What's thrown in front of zoology? Animals. What's thrown in front of. The sub-metaphysics is being as being. In a lovely little word.
Why is it?
Pardon?
Why is it?
Why is what?
Why is the subject being?
Well, supposing I said to you, you're looking into your family tree, I'd say, why is it? Why is it?
I just said it.
Pardon?
I just said, why is it?
Yeah, but supposing I said then, why is it, if you're studying your family tree?
Right?
It's somewhat a question, an obvious question. You'd say, it's because I want to study it. It's all those I came from. Now, why is it called this?
Why is it the word being?
Well,
B-I-N-G,
well,
and not thought.
no, we're not concerned about thought here. We're concerned about what the object of the science is, which is in thought. What the object of the science is. We can study being as vegetative. It's the study of plants. Being as sensitive. There's the study of animals. We can study being as valued. We're studying economics. But we're not. We're just going to study being as being. We're just going to look at the beingness of beings. It's a little difficult to grasp at first, but we'll learn it a bit at a time as we go along. So the subject is being. We call this the subject of a science. This is the object of a science. The subject of chemistry is the elements. The object of the science of chemistry is all its properties. The object of the science is to study its properties. Subject of psychology is man, and the object is all his properties. The object, what's aimed at the science, is to understand why he's social, why he's rational, why he's laughing, why he's talking, why he's poetic, etc. We call that the object. But metaphysics, we're looking at all these beings, but from this angle, the fact that they're being. And what does be come from? The verb to be. We're studying beings. What aspects of it? We're studying their being. And we get at the very basis of all human knowledge. Most fascinating study. I was speaking to Dr. Deegan in Australia before I left. Jeff and I were the first two to bring degrees back to the Aquinas Academy in Australia from overseas. And I said I was teaching metaphysics. He said, oh man, I love teaching that. It's a beautiful study. I said, yes, you're right, Jeff, so do I. The further you get into it, when we get right into it, then you'll start to see the beauty of it. So, the object of a science is the aspect or viewpoint we study. So look at that. I've written that out, spelled a lot of it out for you. And on page 14, chapter 4, or just a little remark, the existential character of metaphysics. Metaphysics sounds like, oh, it's hairy-fairy nonsense. One relative of mine insulted me, not this time, but a couple of years ago, he insulted me. He said, oh, you and your highfalutin nonsense, he said. And I thought, apart from the fact it was rude, it demonstrated appalling ignorance. Appalling ignorance. It's the most down-to-earth science you can deal with. Because you're right in the heart of reality. Every possible aspect of reality. I can remember being overwhelmed when I was quite young in philosophy. I remember looking at all the trees and sky and thinking, my God, all these forms. Yet it came from one being. One being created the lot. He's mine. Look at the pieces of sand. We've got beaches in Australia. You don't see beaches like we've got elsewhere. They're golden sand. And what I found so funny is to find these kangaroos lounging around them in one particular place on the coast of New South Wales. It was so funny to see them all lounging around the beach. And I've seen a picture of a kangaroo actually shooting the breakers. People think at the town of Ulladulla, Aboriginal name of course, town of Ulladulla, in the local council, they've got pictures there. They said that it was hard to believe, but there's a kangaroo actually shooting the breakers. Anyway, but look at the sands. Think, we've got beaches named 9 Mile Beach, 5 Mile Beach, etc. The grains of sand just on that beach alone. I've often said, if you wanted to write just on silicon dioxide, in other words, that's the chemical formula for sand. If you wanted to write a complete, exhaustive treatment of a grain of sand, you'd fill every library in the world. I've often thought of driving up some of the headings. I've always been very interested in the chemistry of silicon, and I found a book in which it had 70 different acids, of which silicon was the heart of it. It gives me delight just to read it. But you'd fill the libraries of the world. One day I'll write something, an essay on that, just to show you how it's done. But the power and majesty of the mind that designed all this is magnificent. So we go on. Now, chapter 4, the concept of being is analogous. See, there are 3 ways a term can be used. It can be used this way: either univocally, or equivocally, or analogous. Univocal, equivocal, or analogous. A term can be used. So when we use this term being, time is a being. A tree is a being. Are we using the term the same way? Of course not. Yet there's something similar, isn't there? They both exist. Is it univocal? Well, here's a univocal term: animal. The term animal is used about an ant or an elephant. It's used the same way. It means an animal, it means an organism with senses, sense life. An oyster, you know those noisy things that lie on the bottom of the ocean, the noisy oyster, and they themselves, again, they're sensitive. I don't think anybody's ever determined how many senses they have. Maybe they've only got the sense of touch, which is the least that any animal can have. Sense of touch. No plant has the sense of touch. But the question is, an oyster is equally an animal with an elephant. They're both sensitive animals, have sense life, senses like sight, hearing, or just touch or taste, etc. So, is that the way we use the term being? Certainly not. You can't say, for instance, look at this here. There it comes one of these. I don't know what you'd call it. The first time I used it in the classroom, a fellow sitting in the front, I said, look at this. I said, look, here comes another one. He ducked. So, the question is then, can these things have the same one voice? That's what unus in Latin means one. Vox means voice. Vox vocis. Univocal. This is the noun, this is the genitive of the voice. So the question is, can we say equally that they're animals? Yes, we can say that. Now, equivocal. This means simply the same. That's the way to describe that. Simply the same. Simply same. That's univocal. This one is utterly unsame. No sameness at all when we use the term. For instance, tick. You can get a tick from a clock, or it's a little insect. I think I've had a tick in me about 3 times in my life. I was very sick after one, a big shellback tick got in my side. And when you pull them out, they release poison. And I was very sick for about 4 days, 5 days. But that insect, you can't say the tick means the same here as it does there. I've often pulled people up, what do you mean by the term? That's what Socrates did. What do you mean by the term? When you say it here, do you have the same meaning there? No, you don't. So you can't say that the term being is used that way. Simply saying utterly unsane. What we say, if you like, in some way, say some sameness, but more unsameness. That's the best way to put it. When you speak about something analogically alike, it's only an analogy, there's a greater unsameness. Now I've written out some examples in the pages here for you. This first one came, by the way, from a boy working for me in my pharmacy many, many years ago. Robert was a lovely young lad, 14 years of age, and he used to do messages for us after school. And somebody said, Robert, would you sweep the floor, please? And Robert swept the floor up. And then later somebody said, Robert, did you sweep the floor yet? Yes, he said. You better sweep it again. It doesn't look too good. He's sweeping and he says, gee, a fella's got to sweep the floor here to 4 decimal places. Isn't that a beautiful analogy? It's absolutely beautiful. Last I heard, he was an officer in the Royal Australian Navy. I haven't seen him for many years. Then we say, down in the bowels of a ship, on the SS Orsova in 1958, coming to North America, I was in the bowels of the SS Orsova. I've never forgotten it. Upstairs and downstairs are 2 different worlds. All the machinery going, and these huge axle, what would you call it, driving the propellers, and oh dear, everything was a hive of industry down there. And I can imagine if you were trapped in the ship as it's sinking, what a terrible place it would be. All this diesel operation of the ship. Then the bed of a river. Is that a bed the same way as you sleep in of a night? Hardly. There's some sameness though. The anger of the sea. I once wrote a poem about that, the anger of the sea, when it's thrashing upon the rocks with the foam around the teeth, etc., etc. Or I'm going to put on the nose bag, as we say in Australia. It goes from when, people don't say it now, but when I was a boy you could hear that. Somebody's going to put the nose bag on, they're going to have lunch. Like a horse, you put the nose bag on it.
Yeah, feed bag. Right. Yes.
A fierce wind, you could see the anger in the wind, grrr. And you take everything in your stride. Somebody's called a bookworm. If you give some people an inch, they'll take a mile. You learn in leaps and bounds. Oh, he walked through his studies, that fellow. To skim over the surface of a book, or you see through someone. And somebody called Joe a pompous ass. Well, it's like the ass, the donkey, being, walking with his nose in the air, etc. And the girls will nestle into his arms, or something like that. Where were we? Or this other one I like is to nest boxes. Nest boxes.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, you nest if you've got a whole lot of boxes and you want to save space, you put the biggest one first and put the next one inside, and make smaller, and you'll end up with boxes.
Stacking.
Yeah, stacking. Then the piano is an instrument. An orange is an instrument of health. A toothpick is an instrument of health. A car is an instrument for travel. A computer is an instrument for mathematical calculation. All are said, the word instrument is said of all of them, but in a diverse manner. The Latin is interesting. Likewise, time is a being, a tree is a being, space is a being, you are a being, a movement is a being, growing is a being, hot and cold are beings, the square root of -1 is a being. It's at least a being in the intellect. We'll see that presently in chapter 5. The nesting boxes. There was a famous story about a man in the Second World War. He was told he'd probably be called up, so he volunteered. Went to the army and said, they said, what do you do? He said, I'm a glute maker. You're a what? Said the recruiting sergeant. I'm a glute maker. And he didn't want to show his ignorance. They said, oh, we don't have room for any glute makers. You better go and try the Air Force. So he went to the Air Force. He says, I'm a glute maker. They said, you're a what? A glute maker. Lord. So they didn't want to plead their ignorance. They raced around looking up books, all sorts of things, and finally they came to the conclusion that they had no need for a glute maker. So finally goes to Navy and told them what had happened to him, and they said, oh, we always need a glute maker. We'll take you on, you know, not appearing to be as ignorant as the others. So they assigned him to a ship and said, let's know what you want, we'll provide you equipment. So he said, I want a lot of lumber and I want some tools. So they gave him a place to do his work and left him to it. And he's sawing and cutting and all sorts of things, and finally one day he says, well, I'm ready. He's ready for what? Says the captain. He said, bring him out. Put him on deck, and he put out a big box. On top of it he put another big box. On top of that he put a smaller box. On top of that, till he got right at the top, and he had a big brass ball. He put it on top and let it go. It went plonk, 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 fell in the sea and went bloop. With that we'll finish. Thank you very much. By the way, you can turn off.